my work in my study really resonates with what Professor Leila Patel says, that successful realization of economic goals requires access to microcredit and promoting microenterprise as part of a holistic social development agenda to address the feminization of poverty. So what does this mean for us as social workers? Women's contribution to the informal economy is an important source of income as a survivalist economic activity, which is really dependent on resources and social networks and connections upon which the woman can draw. Policymakers should put in place systems that can ameliorate existing power imbalances and reduce gender injustice in the economy. There is an urgent need for national and provincial policies to include the concerns of women who are self-employed and who work as entrepreneurs to ensure that they have access to trading permits and microcredit to sustain their business activities. And I'd like to stop there. Thank you very much for listening to me.
We found it rather interesting that some institutions actually said they didn't know what developmental social work is all about. So that's why they were not offering it. Or that's why they were not moving in that direction. Others said, yeah, we may have interest, but the institution itself is fixated on the remedial approach, so there is no way for us to move in the direction of developmental social work. So there was limited appreciation of the concept. Others would say, well, when it came to field work, there was the problem that there was shortage of qualified field supervisors or supervisors who had a clear picture of what the developmental approach was all about. In other words, they were content with the conventional approaches.
Sawubona, Kunjani, Habari, happy Africa Day to everyone. And I'd like to start off by remembering one of our late ancestors, Nkrumah, late President Nkrumah. And he says, I am not African. I'm not an African because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me. And, when I teach on decoloniality, I always share this picture of the two sides of Africa. And this is really the force that we should become. The global map doesn't really adequately represent the two sides of Africa, both our hearts and our capabilities and abilities. And so today I'm mostly going to talk a little bit about social work history and organizing in Africa, or more social work educators history and organizing, and a bit about ASWA. Because this is who we've been asked to represent. And just in terms of how these bodies are really important for us to actually start addressing important issues in Africa from an African perspective, from a decolonial perspective, which was really what our colleague Jacob also mentioned in the beginning of our discussions. So just to say that actually the first conference to discuss social issues in Africa was held in Abidjan, Ivory Coast in 1954. Many moons ago. And between 1965 and 71, various meetings were held to establish the Association for Social Work Education in Africa. And this was formally launched in 1971. So organization by educators in Africa has a long history. In 1965 in Egypt, 16 African schools of social work were represented. And the purpose was to examine the content of training programs and syllabuses and to make a critical survey of existing trends in training in social work. And this was already in 1965, right? So, and then in 1969, the expert working group of social work educators met to further discuss issues in West Africa. And in that same year, they met to formally establish ASWIA, which was the Association for Social Work Educators in Africa. And at that time already, educators were talking about social development, coloniality, decolonization of education, and developing appropriate curriculum for the African context. So the things we're talking about now is really not new. By the fifth conference, the ASWIA conference in Ethiopia in 1985, they had a membership of 55 social development training institutions and 150 social work educators from 33 African countries. But we are struggling to get this right now in ASWA, despite us having better technology and means of communication, which they clearly didn't have at that time. They didn't have the internet, they didn't have Zoom and WhatsApp and all of these kind of technologies we currently have, as well as kind of websites. So I'm not sure what happened in the years between 1985 and 2005. That was almost 20 years. In fact, some of this research is being done currently by Linda Kreitzer and Prof. Abaitase and a few others. So I'm really looking forward to their research.
I just want to take this opportunity to really thank all our speakers for the knowledge, the knowledge that you have shared with us. I can't be the same with how we started. There is a lot that I have learned. And also thank you participants, because without you, these presentations would not really make any sense. So thank you for the questions. My task has been to just come up with the 10 key points or themes for us as African social workers. So what do we work on from this conference, this workshop, this presentations that we have had?